Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's Jennifer Zio again with conversations with really cool people doing really cool things. And today I'm talking with Michael Roderick. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear about Michael because Michael kind of has this, I'm going to say this concept and this theory and this process that kind of went like this with my brain. And he believes, and now I believe, that you can have access to anyone by kind of following his process. And so I'm going to open it up there, Michael. Let's talk about
Sure.
what do you mean by access to everyone? Because knowing my people, they're like, well, what does that mean? And I don't want to have it. I'm going to have to do anything bad. Like, so what does that mean?
Yeah. So ultimately, pretty much everybody, no matter what industry you're in, no matter where you are in life, there is some kind of access problem that exists. Whether it be that you're trying to reach certain people, whether it be that you're trying to connect with certain markets, and in some cases, as many of us know, just access parts of yourself, right?
Right.
That you had no idea were there, right? And could sort of help you and support you. So the idea here is to help folks understand that access is really, it ultimately just comes down to interest. It comes down to, can you create enough interest and enough excitement in whatever it is you've developed or whatever it is that you've created to basically bring the opportunities to you and the conversations to your life.
Okay. Now, all of you don't freak out because I think people are going, oh my God, I need the right words. No, this stuff is already inside of you, which you already know.
Yep.
Right? And so you're not going to have to be or do anything different. What you really do is have to gain, or what you get to do is really highlight the way you're already being and your essential nature. So people are like, yeah, I like you and I want more of you. So,
Exactly.
Michael, in doing that, because listen, we could spend 4 hours on this and it's really, I mean, I have 6 page of notes from Michael, but can you give us a brief overview so people could get a sense of what this really means?
Sure, sure. So basically, I would say this sort of there's kind of three main things that you need to think about. So the first is the idea of leaving the line. So most of the time, what tends to happen is we sort of get into this place where we get in line of all the other people kind of doing a similar thing, going for the same sort of direction. And sometimes we're either copying or sort of like trying to be like everybody else. And in some cases, we're sort of pulling from all these other things that other people have done without actually sort of testing our own ideas and our own concepts. So the first step is always to basically be like, well, which lines am I stuck in right now? And how do I leave the line? That's always the first kind of hurdle
Love that.
that you deal with, right? The second is look for the windows. So, most of the time, especially when it comes to access, we engage in what I like to refer to as doorway thinking, where somebody says, this is the channel, or this is the model, or this is the way to do it. So, everybody kind of tries to jam themselves through that same door. And really, what you want to do is you want to look for the windows. You want to look at what are all the different angles and opportunities and possibilities in whatever the challenge is that I'm experiencing. Rather than saying, okay, this is the only door and I'm going to try to jam myself through it, really look for the windows and start to kind of think about what are those different angles and different opportunities. And then the final piece is leverage the web. And whether you realize you've done it or not, you every time you're meeting people, connecting with people, getting to know people from all the different industries and worlds that you've been a part of, you're threading those people together. And what's that doing is it's creating this web. And the larger the web, the easier it is to bring the opportunities to you, to have things happen, to let people know what it is you're looking for, and to have those people sort of come to you. So you start by basically looking at, well, what line am I standing in? And then once you've identified the problem, you start to say, okay, well, what are the windows here? Because you're almost always going to see the door, right? And then finally, how do I leverage that web?
Right.
Who do I know who could potentially help or support me in this journey that I'm taking?
So if you notice, I already got my pen and blah blah blah, like right. Yeah, because all of you who know your soul languages, like you should be on that table where it gives you a list of everyone else who knows their soul languages. So you could go, oh, I want to play with this people based on your languages because you already have something in common, and or on your language definitions there are people that you should be playing with, and they can support you in a whole new way. So I love what you're saying. Where do you think like people are afraid to step out of that line? Like, why don't that seems, I mean, especially as a renegade, I'm like, yeah, I could step out of line, but I can also see myself where, oh, do I want to step out of the line? Like I have been totally stepping out of the line by gracefully poo-pooing human design. Like
Yeah,
right? So I've been stepping out of that line like I think it creates codependence. Like I have a list, but I've been
yeah,
doing it gracefully and stepping out. Instead of like holding my tongue when people are like, oh, human design, blah, blah, blah. So why do you think people have a hard time stepping out of that line?
yeah. I think ultimately it's if you've seen somebody else be successful at something, it gives you a sense of assurance, right? So it makes you think, okay, well, if somebody else has accomplished this or sort of had this done, then really all I have to do is sort of follow along, right? And sort of like do the paint by numbers. And it is a much scarier thing to basically say, you know what, I'm going to try to go a different direction, right? I'm going to basically go into a place where I could really fall on my face. Like this could not work sort of at all, right? So that aspect of basically feeling like, well, there's nothing to follow here, right? I'm sort of stepping off into this path and I have no idea where this path is going to go. I think for a lot of people it can feel really intense, right? And I think that the other thing is that all too often we become so obsessed with the product, the end result, that if we take that time and we leave the line and we end up having it fall apart, then we're just absolutely crushed,
Right.
right? Whereas if we're a student of the process as opposed to a slave to the product, right? And we basically are like, okay, I did this thing. It did not work the way that I expected it to. Why? What can I learn here? What are the other opportunities here? What are the other possibilities here? Then, even when something kind of falls apart or doesn't work the way that you want it to work, you're basically like, okay, this is not failure. This is new information. And I
I
can
love it.
use this new information to sort of figure out where do I go next? What types of experiments can I try next to follow my path? Right? Follow the path that matters and sort of is interesting to me.
Yeah. And there's a tool for that, everyone. In Soul to Business, it's called conscious evaluation. So you can evaluate it and then learn from it, because I've had that experience and I was like, oh, let's just invent a tool, which I do. Um,
Love it.
and thank you. And, it also gives people a lot more freedom to go, okay, and you also have the firm belief that that product, that service, that person is not the source for you. It's a resource. And that
Mhm.
allows you to step out of the line more. I want to talk about the web for a moment because I think
Sure.
that especially really strong warrior individuals have a hard time going, okay, how can I tap into my capital, my human capital?
Yeah.
And, how can I ask for something? So I'm going to do it right now. Everyone ready? If any of you know Barbara Streisand, I want to hook up because I want to meet her. Her
Nice.
book is fascinating. I have so many questions for her. Um, but seriously, like, how do feel, what's your process in feeling comfortable accessing your web? Like, is
Hmm.
there any certain tricks you have or,
Sure.
any advice you want to give?
Yeah. So asking feels hard, right? For pretty much everybody. And if we think about it sort of on a spectrum, the more we want something or desire something or sort of need something, the more anxiety we experience around the ask, right? Like the more concern there is around the ask. So the interesting thing about that is it really isn't our fault that we feel that way. It's actually our biology. And if I am asking you directly for something, if I say, will you give this to me? Will you help me, solve this problem, whatever the scenario is, right? I feel like I'm stealing your food. There is a subconscious, like primitive brain thing going on, and you feel like you're having your food stolen. We go right back to primitive times when we are being very direct with each other. Now, every once in a while, you have a very strong relationship with someone and you can be very direct back and forth. But most of the time, we're not dealing with somebody that we have a very strong relationship with, especially when we're in the process of leveraging the web. So, the best thing that we can do is ask in an indirect way. And what you do is you basically present the problem or the struggle that you're having. And rather than saying, can you make this intro? Can you do this thing? Can you do this thing for me? You say, do you have any ideas? Because when you ask directly, you're asking somebody to do something for you. When you ask indirectly and you say, do you have any ideas? You're inviting them to be a thought partner with you. And when that happens, they get to use their creativity to solve your problem, to help you. And that we limit the things we get in life when we limit other people's creativity. If we don't give them the opportunity to be creative and sort of think through what are the ways to solve this particular problem, then it's usually just a yes or no, and it's pretty quick. And the relationship isn't very established because we're not engaging in a problem solving conversation together. We're engaging in a very basic transaction of, will you do this thing for me? Yes or no. And you feel different
Yeah.
when that happens, right? And the way that I like to think about it is like, that's climbing ladders, right? Like that's trying to basically like sort of move like this. Spinning webs goes like this, right? So
Whoa.
like we need to think about like what are all the different
Interconnected.
angles?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Brilliant. All of this is brilliant. How do people get in touch with you if they want to access your ideas?
Sure, sure. So I have a really fun tool called a referability rater, and they can find that at myreferabilityrater.com. And basically, what it does is it asks a series of questions that helps you sort of see how referable your ideas and your concepts are. So when they do that, they'll be able to get on my mailing list. They'll be able to get an evaluation of sort of how referable they are. There's a bunch of these types of frameworks and models even within just taking that quiz. And then, people are more than happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Book of Faces, all the other fun sort of social places. I'm always happy to say hi and help.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for being in this conversation today. It was really fun. I'm going
Thanks.
to do the referability thing because I think it's a great idea.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much for spending time with us. Everyone, reach out to this guy. I never know how to end the conversations because I don't have a bit. So as they say, that's it, everyone. Bye for now.